From the loveliest village on the plains, this is the Southeastern Sports Podcast.
45, there goes Davis. Oh my God! Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game. Auburn's going to win the football game. He ran the missed field goal back. He ran it back 109 yards. They're not going to keep him off the field tonight.
The 2-1. Swung line drive left field. One run is in. Here comes Green. Here's the front of the plate. He is safe. Braves win. Braves win. Ross swings enough drive to deep left field. That one's gone. That one's gone. Auburn wins. Auburn wins. Auburn wins. Auburn wins.
He's going to heave one deep down the field. It's going to be to the goal line. It's going to be gone. It's a touchdown. And the Gators have won the game. Tyree Cleveland. Oh, my. I can't believe what I just saw.
There goes Herschel. There goes Herschel. Herschel Walker scores. Man, did he turn it on when he had to. Black's got one setback and four wide receivers. Desperation play. Black's going to throw in the end zone. Got a man wide open. He's got it. Touchdown, Auburn. Touchdown, Auburn.
Now with this week's show, here's John Abrams, Riley Hubbard, and Braison Pierce.
Welcome on in. Southeastern Sports Podcast, Episode 3. Live from the loveliest village on the plains, that is Auburn, Alabama. Thank you all for joining us this week. This week will be a continuation of our series from last week, in which we go over each of the SEC teams. We did 3 last week. This week we'll be focusing on the Ole Miss Rebels, Black Bears, Land Sharks, whatever they think that they are. We'll also be focusing on the LSU Tigers and Ed Orgeron's third year, correct? Yes, his third year. It's lots of expectations for Ed O, and also Mississippi State and Joe Moorhead's second season in Starkville. We're going to go ahead and start with Joe Moorhead and the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Obviously went above and beyond expectations that Joe Moorhead had in his first season. What do you guys think is to come in his second season, despite not having Nick Fitzgerald, arguably one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the SEC?
I think not having Nick Fitzgerald is really going to hurt, because a lot of pretty much their whole offense was based around his ability to, his dual threat ability. And then defensively, I know they lose a couple top defensive linemen to the draft, Jeffrey Simmons and Montez Sweat. So I think it might be a little bit of a rebuilding year for Mississippi State.
Before we go too much further, I forgot to introduce the studio that we have today. Braison Pierce is the voice that you just heard. John Abrams, Walker Schumacher-Bailey from Episode 1, and Grady Hall, who you heard in Episode 2. Guys, really excited to have you guys back and talking about some SEC football. John,
Howdy.
what do you have to say off of what Braison just said?
I mean, you don't really know what Mississippi State's going to have coming this year, especially at quarterback. I know they got the Penn State transfer, Tommy Stevens, coming in. So he'll probably get the starting job if I had to guess, but you still just don't know what he can bring to the table.
Yeah, really a lot of question marks around the quarterback position. But on the defensive side of the ball, as Braison said, Montez Sweat leaving for the NFL draft. What kind of question marks do you have on the defensive side of the ball? Is that what's going to power this team, or are they still going to be an offensive team? I mean, if you're going to be in the SEC West, you've got to have a solid defense.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Joe Moorhead was defensive coordinator for Penn State. Is that right?
Yeah, no, he was offensive coordinator.
Offensive coordinator.
And then, right before that, he was a head coach. What was it? Somewhere in the Colonial League. It's where
really?
His alma mater.
I couldn't tell you where he was the head coach, but I know he was offensive coordinator at Penn State.
He was a head coach at the middle of nowhere, and then he became the offensive coordinator at Penn State. Yes.
Okay, but yeah, they're losing a nasty defensive line, one of the best in the country last year. Montez Sweat was an absolute weapon there. I think they have people to fill in behind Sweat and Simmons, but you're obviously not going to get a line like they had last year.
Fordham University, by the way, I'm being told, is where he was the head coach from 2012 to 2015. Then Penn State for 2 years, the offensive coordinator, 16 and 17. He, of course, he's an offensive guy, but he's also a quarterback's coach at Penn State. So maybe he's a quarterback-oriented guy, and the transfer in kind of sees that in him.
And I think that's a big part of it, why Stevens transferred there. Obviously, he had a relationship and a rapport with
Even though it's not
Moorhead
official, he'll
before.
start. I mean, everybody kind of
Yeah.
expects that.
Yeah.
And I think they do have a good second option in Thompson.
Yeah, I agree.
He's a good dual threat guy. I don't think anyone's gonna be impressed by his throwing, but he can do. I think he is a better runner than Fitzgerald was, purely from a running standpoint. But
Grady, what do you think about State this year?
Interestingly enough, Mississippi State brings back a lot of talent on offense. 3 of their top guys, Stephen Guidry, Kylan Hill, and Farrad Green, come back. So Stevens will have options to throw to and to hand the ball off to. And the offensive line is pretty deep, a bunch of seniors and juniors and some top picks possibly, and Darrell Williams coming. And then defense is the big question mark. Their D-line, obviously, we stated before, has lost a lot of weapons, but they still have Cam Dantzler, who's probably going to be a first-day draft pick. It's just, I think they'll be good on offense. It's just defense is the big question mark for them.
Yeah, it is a big question mark. And, I mean, like I said earlier, if you're going to compete in the SEC West, I feel like you have to be strong up front if you're going to compete. With that being said, what do you guys think? We'll kind of obviously finish up the segment here. Where do you think that Mississippi State finishes in the SEC? Braison, I'll start with you.
Okay, let's see. In the West, I would probably put them probably 5th behind Alabama, Auburn, LSU, A&M. In the overall in the SEC, I'd say middle of the pack. Probably
Right.
around that 8 or 9 spot.
Walker?
I think you have to put State below, again, Alabama, Texas A&M, LSU, Auburn, and they'll be in a battle with probably Arkansas. And I think Ole Miss and
You
Arkansas.
put them that low to where they're battling with Arkansas?
No, I'd say, let me take that back. I'd say Ole Miss and Arkansas are probably going to be battling for the last spot.
Okay.
And I'd put State after the top 4
Just
that I
above
just
them. That's
mentioned.
fair.
Yeah.
John?
I would put Mississippi State probably at 5th or 4th in the West. I think that they could upset A&M possibly. Does anybody know if they're on the road or at home?
I believe that Texas A&M is actually going on the road to play. I'm sorry. No, they're hosting. They were hosting Mississippi State. So
Okay.
for them to go into Kyle Field and win is going to be pretty difficult.
Yeah, that would be difficult. I still could see them upsetting them. But yeah, probably 4th or 5th in the West is what I'd put them at.
Grady?
I'm going to be the one that puts them a little higher than A&M in this group. I think they're a little better than A&M. I think A&M's a lot of hype. But the weapons they have returning on offense, I think, are good enough to get them to 7-5 and a top half finish in the West. And I think they can really give Alabama a run because they play them at home, and LSU a run because they play them at home this year. And we know how annoying those cowbells are in Mississippi State. So I see them like a 7-5 team, similar to A&M. But they and A&M could flip-flop. They're right in the same category.
You're giving them the benefit of the doubt, though, saying that they could give Alabama and LSU a run for the money, the tops in the West.
Well, LSU, that's a rivalry game for LSU, and
Right.
I don't know. It's just it's kind of the same thing with A&M playing in Kyle Field. They play better at home, I feel like, Mississippi State.
Right.
They are
do.
hosting too. They're hosting LSU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could definitely see them beating LSU before I could see them beating
Yeah.
Alabama. But I see where you're coming from
Yeah.
with the whole home field thing.
It's kinda like Auburn.
In Death Valley, you really don't see that happening. But since it's in Starkville, it could happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like LSU Mississippi State's kind of a weird game every year. Maybe that's just me, but
I'll kind of go along with what you guys are saying. I think that they're kind of middle of the road. They are not a bad team, but compared to the SEC West, they will kind of be a bad team because they'll be below Alabama, Auburn, LSU, and A&M, not particularly in that order, but just kind of behind them, but like Walker said, above Arkansas and Ole Miss. But, I could see them knocking off an A&M. I could see them knocking off an LSU maybe. So, they're definitely nobody to sleep on, but I don't think that they're, contending for the SEC championship.
No.
I have a question for the room. How do you all feel about Moorhead's coaching and through year one, and also if you know anything about his Penn State career?
I think it was a strange hire at first because he was a Northeastern kind of guy, and being at Fordham and the Colonial League and Penn State, and it just didn't seem like it would work. But from what I understand, I have some friends that live in Starkville. They say that he has been received extremely well and that people seem to like him. And obviously he was successful in year one. He even got a win over Auburn, which was huge, probably his biggest win of the season, if I had to guess. And I think he's been received really well. It's just can he keep it up and can he continue to show that they're going to improve?
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of unknowns about him, though. Through his first year, it was average. So if it gets better from here, then I don't think anybody has a problem with him, but it just kind of remains to be seen.
I agree. I don't think there's any reason for concern right now. You're just going to have to see what he does the next couple years.
Go ahead, Grady.
I was just going to add on to it. He had a similar quarterback style in a sense. Trace McSorley, more of a running quarterback that can throw. Not as much as Nick Fitzgerald, much more of a running threat. So he's had a similar quarterback. It'll be interesting to see what he does with a different style of quarterback. I'm not exactly sure how what his style of quarterbacking is, but I think he's bought himself a couple years after last year, and I think he's a player's coach. If you look at the games if you watch some of the games, you'd see that he talks to his players, he fights for his players, yelling at refs. So I feel like he's a player's coach as well, and so he's a pretty good fit right now.
All right, we're going to take a quick break on the Southeastern Sports Podcast. When we come back, we will be talking about the Tigers of LSU. Stick around.
Now more of the Southeastern Sports Podcast with John, Riley, and Braison.
Southeastern Sports Podcast rolls along. The first week of SEC action is, Walker, 28 days away. Just like the movie, which I've never seen, but apparently exists. 28 days away from the first week of action of college football, which means we need to get a move on as far as previewing all of those seasons. The next on the list, the LSU Tigers, Ed O's group. Orgeron entering his third season as the head coach at LSU. A lot of expectations this year. Last year was kind of a year that everyone expected to be, Ed Orgeron kind of on the hot seat. That's not exactly the case anymore. Now people are starting to kind of warm up to him, it seems. And he and his players are starting to be more confident. First, I'll go ahead and start asking you guys, what do y'all think about Ed Orgeron as a head coach? Braison?
Well, he's definitely a player's coach. His players definitely, gravitate towards him, and I think a lot of the fans like him too. As far as his abilities as a head coach, I'd say he's kind of unproven. I mean, he had a decent season last year.
And at USC, he did a good job.
He was really good as an interim the year before that. I think I see nothing so far to point to him being a bad head coach. As far as is he a championship level head coach, that remains to be seen. But I think he's
LSU seems to think he has a chance.
Yes,
and
I know he's got a new contract. So I think he's a good coach.
I personally think that he's a good head coach. Like I said, never won a championship, but in Louisiana, he's the perfect kind of coach because he's a Cajun himself. And on top of that, he's a great defensive mind. And like you said, the players seem to really gravitate towards him. And he's able to bring in some pretty decent talent. Walker, what do you think about Coach O?
I love the hire for LSU, keeping him from the interim position. And honestly, I thought it was going to be a type of situation similar to Matt Luke at Ole Miss, where you have kind of a mediocre season, but he really came out and answered those doubts that I and a lot of other people had. I think, like Braison said, he's still unproven in the sense that he has had one good season, but I do like the hire. I think he's a perfect fit for LSU right now, from a player's standpoint especially. Like Braison said, he is a player's coach.
Yeah.
He's a good recruiter as well.
He is a good recruiter, and I mean, recruiting to LSU it should be pretty easy. That's a place where great talent always comes out of LSU. And on top of that, LSU's always been a place, especially under Les Miles, that kind of had the curse of great defense, but never really had a quarterback to lead them. The best quarterback I think that they've had in the last 10 years would be like Jordan Jefferson. Is there really anybody who's been any better than that?
Zach Mettenberger.
I would say Zach Mettenberger, but he did have a lot of injury issues when he was
only
there.
really played for a little over a year, I guess.
Yeah.
For the Titans.
Anyway, now they have Joe Burrow, and I don't know if he's like one of the best in the SEC necessarily, but it's a guy, he's reliable. He's a good quarterback, and he's kind of a guy, especially at SEC Media Days, you could see he was extremely confident in his abilities. What do you guys have to think about Burrow and, his future at LSU? Do you think it's kind of bright, or do you think he'll fall into the typical LSU, we don't really have a quarterback, but we have a good defense? John, start with you.
He's a good game manager, but, nothing last year really just kind of
Yeah, he's not
jumped
incredible,
out at you.
but he is he's going to be the starter.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good quarterback, don't get me wrong, but he's just kind of an average quarterback, nothing crazy.
I am not a huge fan of Joe Burrow. I've said this multiple times.
Think he's overrated?
Yes, he's barely above a 50% completion guy. He's a solid game manager, but he's a glorified Sean White, if you want to ask me. The offensive line looks solid. They got some weapons on offense. They lose Brissett, but they still got Edwards Hellier. Defense is going to be always good. Coach O and LSU seems to always have a good defense. They're good. They're good. It's just can you stop their offense? And I think you can with Joe Burrow behind center.
Fair enough. Braison, you want to add on that?
Yeah, I would agree that, I mean, Joe Burrow hasn't really impressed me that much as a quarterback. I mean, he hasn't made many mistakes, but he hasn't also done that many, spectacular things. But that being said, LSU did hire a new passing game coordinator from the New Orleans Saints. I believe he was their quarterback's coach.
Pulling an Auburn and having a passing game coordinator,
Yes,
whatever the heck that means. Keep it.
And so it remains to be seen whether that will, possibly integrate Joe Burrow more, because obviously, coming from the Saints, they're definitely a pass-first team with Drew Brees. It also remains to be seen that if it does incorporate him more, whether he steps up and becomes more of a star in their offense, or if it's too much for him to handle and he kind of regresses.
Well, let's go off of the offense and talk about the fact that pretty much unanimously, with everyone expects LSU to finish second in the West and third in the conference behind Bama and Georgia. Would you guys agree with that? Because personally, I would. I think you've got Bama, Georgia, a little bit, then LSU, A&M, Auburn, and then the bottom kind of falls out after that. Where do you guys see LSU, finishing in the SEC? And in the big rivalry game that this year will be in Alabama, do you think LSU can actually knock off Bama and win the West?
I think LSU will be a good team this year, and they definitely could win the SEC. I think they have enough talent to do that. But like you said, and I think we mentioned in the last episode, that LSU seems to always find a way to beat themselves in games. I could see them dropping a game to Florida, Auburn, Alabama, and probably A&M. Not saying that they'll lose all those, but I could see them losing a combination of
one
any
of them
those
that
games.
will really just put them in the trench.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're a good team, and I think, if they don't beat themselves, they could beat anybody.
You think they can actually beat Bama in the 3-2 game? It always feels like it is, because it's always a defensive battle between those two teams.
Yeah, they could do it, but
I think LSU Bama this year might be a little bit more potent offensively than in past years, just because new hires by both teams on offense. Obviously, you have Tua and his weapons.
and both teams
Alabama.
lost a lot of defensive talent.
Yes,
So,
Devin White on LSU, and then a lot of defensive linemen.
Greedy Williams for LSU.
Yes, for Bama.
I never worry about Alabama's defense because I always know they're just going to replace them with another 5-star.
Yeah,
Although
they're not as senior, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think they've been quite as unbeatable recently as they were. Still a very, very good defense, don't get me wrong, but maybe not the unstoppable thing that they once were. But back to LSU, I think they could win the SEC, but I don't think they will. I think they will find a way to lose 2 games that they probably shouldn't lose, or at least, have a decent shot at winning, because it just seems like that's always what they do. A couple years ago they lost to Troy and ended up having a 9-win season.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
So, yeah.
Just shows how dominant Troy was that year.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I would agree. I really think that their defense is what keeps them in games, and it's always incredible. And on top of that, you have Ed Orgeron as your coach, kind of a defensive-minded coach. It's just a matter of how good the offense is going to be, which should be improved from last year. Grady, what do you have to say?
I think that LSU's offense may take a step back this year. They lost some weapons on offense. I mean, they still got Justin Jefferson. Edwards Hellier is going to have to pick up the slack for Brissett. And Joe Burrow is going to have to start actually throwing the ball correctly. I mean, I don't know if it was his offensive line last year that was letting pass rush get in, except for Auburn. Apparently, we sucked against them. Playmakers around him.
He's confident that he is the greatest passer in the SEC.
Well, he can be confident, but you can look at his completion percentage, and that'll argue against
I
it.
agree.
So is Kellen Mond, but
One could even call him the Derek Dietrich of college football, if you wanted to.
And on that note, we're going to take a quick break.
Don't you want to know why?
Go ahead, Braison. Why?
Because he is self-proclaimed swag. But
Yeah.
Yeah. If you see LSU's Twitter, they said can you even name a quarterback with more swag?
But low
Again, Kellen
percentage.
Mond.
Derek Dietrich, low batting average. Same person, basically.
Walker, what you got?
And just to round this discussion out, I think LSU sits solidly third in the West, and I think
Third in the West?
Third in the West.
Behind Auburn and Alabama?
That's it. 2 teams from Alabama.
Okay.
One of them will come out on top on the
a little
West.
bit below LSU, but that's respectable. I can see Auburn making that jump. But that might require Auburn to win in Baton Rouge, which they haven't done since '99. Is it time to break that?
That's the point I was going for. Yeah, I think it's time. I think this is the most talented team we have brought to Baton Rouge in a while, and I think it's time to break the streak.
More talented than 2013?
I think so.
Okay. Wow, that's very confident right there.
Especially on defense, but another time.
Okay, well, with that, we'll go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking about Matt Luke's group. That's the Ole Miss Rebels. Stick around.
Now more of the Southeastern Sports Podcast with John, Riley, and Braison.
SESP rolls along. Riley Hubbard, Braison Pierce, John Abrams, Walker T. Bailey, and Grady Hall. We've got a full house this week, and we were talking about previewing the SEC team by team before the season starts. We just got done with Mississippi State and LSU. It's not fair to preview one of the Mississippi teams without previewing both of them in the same episode. Would you guys agree? So up next, we've got Matt Luke's crew. That is the newly off of bowl probation, Ole Miss, Rebel, Black Bear, Land Shark things. Whatever they want to be next. I think right now the mascot's a Land Shark, and they still claim the Rebels, but they don't have Colonel Reb. I don't know what's going on there. So anyway, with Ole Miss, Matt Corral obviously is going to be the quarterback this year. I think there's a lot of optimism around him, but nobody really thinks of him as one of the tops in the SEC, but still solid. Ole Miss always has a solid defense. I don't know what it is about Ole Miss. They always have a lot of talent there, and always a lot of talent with receivers, even though they just lost one of the top receivers to the NFL draft. They always have an incredible receiving core. Even with the loss, do you guys think that they can compete in the West, or is it going to be another down year? Because it's going to take a long time for Matt Luke and Ole Miss to clean up the mess that Hugh Freeze left for them.
Earlier in the show I said I think Mississippi State would be fifth in the West, but I could see Ole Miss taking that spot, actually. They have
Which would be a heck of a win for them.
It would be. They have a talented but inexperienced offense, losing A.J. Brown to the draft, as well as DJ Metcalf and DeMarcus Lodge. Obviously not quite as big of a loss, but still.
Still a big loss.
Their top three receivers, most would say. They do have a solid running back coming back in Scotty Phillips. And losing Te'amu hurts, but there's a lot of optimism in Matt Corral. So I think Ole Miss could be a dark horse this year.
Okay. Dark horse to win the SEC?
No,
Definitely.
just to exceed the expectations people have.
Okay,
for
fair enough. I don't think anybody sees them win the SEC.
Maybe a bowl game.
Okay.
Bowl win.
So you think they can go 6-6?
Yes.
I could see them going 6-6. I mean, like you said, they've lost so much that I think it's going to be pretty tough. They're going to go through some growing pains right when they get off of the bowl ban. But I could see them going 6-6, and maybe a couple of big for them wins, games that they aren't exactly expected to win, just good enough to go to a bowl game. And I think that Matt Luke is the perfect kind of guy to lead them out of this. Not the greatest head coach ever, but he's a guy who went to Ole Miss, loves Ole Miss, and not many coaches are willing to, go into a dumpster fire like he did, and I think he's done a beautiful job to this point. Walker, what you got?
Just looking at their schedule, I think it is very realistic to see them make a bowl game this year at 6-6. They've got Memphis, Southeastern Louisiana, Cal, which that might be a toss-up game for them, but Cal coming out of the Pac-12, not very good. It's at home. The Cal game is. Again, I think that they're obviously going to drop games at Alabama. I think Missouri is going to be dangerous in the SEC East, so Missouri, Texas A&M. Oh, and they also have New Mexico State on the schedule. LSU, and I don't think they beat State this year in the Egg Bowl.
No.
Not away, I don't think.
I would also agree. I don't even care where it is in the state. I think that Mississippi State's going to take the Egg Bowl this year.
I don't know. I think Ole Miss could take the Egg Bowl potentially with
Hot take from Braison.
with Mississippi State's losses on defense and uncertainty, somewhat uncertain at quarterback. I'm not picking Ole Miss to win it, but I think it will be a competitive game.
Right.
If they do end up ahead of State in the SEC West, I think that's going to be huge for them in recruiting coming up,
yes.
Especially in the State.
But that's going to be tough for them to do.
I don't see them. I think it's going to be between Ole Miss and Arkansas to see who's going to be last in the West. And to your point you said about good defense, last year they did not have a good defense, in my opinion. It's right here. It says that they gave up 434 yards a game and gave up 36 points a game. To me, that's a pretty bad defense. But I just...
And they're losing the best, two best players on defense.
Yeah,
really.
exactly. So I think defense is really going to hurt them. I don't even... Do y'all know of anybody they have coming for the offense? I mean...
Well, Scotty Phillips, like Braison said.
And Matt Corral, there's been a lot of hype around the transfer.
Oh, yeah.
He's not a transfer,
That's right.
is he?
I don't think he's a
He's a backup, but he had to
Yeah.
play at the end of the year and played very well.
Yes, and he did have a lot of arm talent, was part of the Elite 11 of his class. So,
Okay.
But again, a quarterback does not make a team.
Exactly. And
Right.
if you don't have a defense, you're not going to win many games in the SEC, like you said. So...
Yeah, you're in the wrong league. You need to join the Big 12 if you
Yep.
think you can just win with offense.
Yeah.
So, the very last thing about Ole Miss before we get out of here, you guys are fairly optimistic on them, but at the same time you're being realistic. Put them, second to last in the SEC West. It's kind of agreed upon. As far as the entire SEC, I could see them being. I could give them the 12 or 13 spot. Oh, excuse me, the 11 or 12 spot. What do you guys think?
I'd probably put him about 10th, maybe 11th.
It's pretty high. John?
I'd probably go 11th.
Walker?
This is going to sound crazy, but I think there are very few teams in the SEC that will be worse than them next year. I think you're looking at Tennessee and possibly Kentucky. I'd put them at 12.
Grady, what you think?
I'm going to be the optimistic person here. I think they're going to finish ninth because you got to remember the SEC East is not the SEC West.
Very true.
Vanderbilt.
But also they're having
They're in
to
the
play
West.
the SEC West.
Agreed.
forgot about
Agreed.
Vanderbilt, so I'm
Vanderbilt
moving
will
up a
be
spot.
worse. Arkansas will be worse, and I want to say Missouri will be worse. Even though they got Kelly Bryant, and that's another segment. I'm not going to go into detail, but I just think they're going to be better. I mean, I know they don't have a whole lot coming back, but Matt Luke, I feel like is a player's coach, just like Ed O, just like Joe Moorhead, and I think they're going to scratch out 6 wins and get to a Music City Bowl. Calling it now, Music City Bowl.
Versus who?
Versus, it's going to be a Southeastern team. Southern Miss. Boom.
Man, if that ends up coming true, I'd be very impressed.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, we'll go back and play this. We'll go back and
Freezing
find
cold
this part of the episode and play it 1,000 times if that happens.
Man.
And right before we go, though, very important, probably the most important issue with Ole Miss, should they bring Colonel Reb back? Everyone at once.
Yes.
I really don't care at all.
Wow. See, I'm a Colonel Reb liker. Well, I like Colonel Reb. What's there against Colonel
But
Reb?
to y'all's point, I said no, but I think the black bear, the land shark, is atrocious.
Oh,
It's
it is.
terrible.
They
But
gotta
I also
decide.
think the university is kind of atrocious on its own, so I don't think the
Into that.
mascot does a lot for them either way.
Well, I don't understand the land shark because it's a shark head, but it's like human legs and arms.
That thing is creepy.
It's like Shark Boy and Lava Girl with Taylor Lautner, if you've ever seen
That's
that.
probably what they were going for because that's pretty hype. Let's be honest.
They're calling back to like Robert Kimdichie in like the 5 years ago when they actually had a good defense.
Just bring Colonel Reb back, man. He looked fine.
I mean,
I think.
As long as
I
they
get why they got rid of him, but like,
I think it wasn't.
It was a little
thing.
bit
I think it was a
PC.
political
Anything
thing.
but the land shark.
As long as they just decide on one mascot, I think they'll be all right.
Can I bring up another dig at Ole Miss?
Of course.
Hey, dig at them all
Yeah,
you
dude,
want,
dude,
man.
come on.
Do y'all remember when Hugh Freeze called all those prostitutes?
Vividly.
he said something about that. I can't remember what he said. But it was
Awesome
quite-
guy.
He said something comical trying to defend himself. I can't remember. what
Yeah,
he said.
It's a good time to crack
he was
jokes,
very
huh?
successful there, but they had no choice but to fire him
I'm sure it was just a butt dial. He completely just it was
on the school
no
phone.
intention whatsoever. Yeah.
Well, with that, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. That's it for the SEC preview. When we come back, we're talking trade deadline Braves. Stick around.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at SE Sports Podcast. Now, here's more of the show.
Final segment of the Southeastern Sports Podcast. Braison Pierce, John Abrams, Walker Schumach Bailey, and Grady Hall. I am Riley Hubbard. Pleased to be with you this week. Before we get out of here, we've been previewing some SEC teams. We want to have a little bit of Braves talk because the trade deadline is rapidly approaching. In fact, it's possible that you're listening to this after the trade deadline because it is the week of. However, the Braves have, some things to think about as far as trading. Everyone wants the Braves to get relievers because that is the weakest part of the Braves, even though right now the bullpen has been passable. Other people have seen the whole Madison Bumgarner deal, which the Giants pretty much said that they don't want to trade Bumgarner. Also, the Mets basically putting Noah Syndergaard out on the block. A bunch of Braves fans are saying, let's get Syndergaard. Personally, I don't get it. But what do you guys think about the Braves possibly going after a starter? Or should they go after a reliever? Or should they just keep the farm in hand because there's no need to trade anybody like an Ian Anderson or Waters or Pache or somebody in the future? What do you think, Grady?
I'm thinking that the Braves won't make a move at all. I want them to, but knowing the hesitancy to sign even Dallas Keuchel this year, I don't think the Braves are going to make a big move because, as you said, our bullpen's been passable, not great, but definitely not terrible as we've seen early in the season with the Phillies and the Nationals. If we were going to go after one arm, I would probably still say Will Smith, as I did in the last podcast. He's just been excellent, and the fact that they've already given up Greg Holland, so they're willing to give up guys. I'm not exactly sure how well Greg Holland was doing, but Will Smith is the guy that I would go for, but I don't expect a move.
I also don't expect a big move, but I do think they'll make some probably under the radar moves,
some minor moves,
kind of like the trades for Swarzak, who's been really good, and Blevins, who's been not terrible. But I don't think you're going to see a trade for a big name, and I'm all right with that because, I do want to keep Pache, Anderson, and Waters. As far as Syndergaard, obviously it'd be a great pitcher to have, but
You'd have to give up a lot to get Syndergaard.
I think the price will be too high.
Yeah, I would want to get Syndergaard, but like you said, the price is going to be too high, I'd imagine.
And I think most Braves fans are okay with the Braves, maybe getting an under-the-radar reliever, but don't need a huge name because they don't want to give up those big guys, those Ian Anderson, your Pache, your Waters, etc.
Yeah, I'd probably go for a reliever.
And forgot Wright.
Yeah, I'd go for a reliever, but like you said, it's probably not going to happen. If you were to go for a reliever, I mean, people have talked about getting a closer, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be happening this year or this season.
Something else to focus on, getting away from trade deadline stuff. The Braves, at the time of this recording, are up 6.5 games in the NL East. First of all, did any of you guys expect that to happen? And second, the Nationals and Phillies were both kind of 6.5 or 7, and the Braves are just coming off a great series, or working on a great series rather, in Philadelphia after a couple of blowouts, really. The Braves are looking pretty hot right now, and it looks like they're going to run away with the East. Do you guys think they do run away with the East, or do you think the Nationals/Phillies are actually going to make a run at it? Because right now the Phillies look pretty pathetic.
I think it depends on how these series against the Phillies and Nationals. If the Braves can win both those series, I think they run away with it. Mm-hmm. If either the Phillies or the Nationals win one of those series, then it'd be kind of up in the air. But I think if they win those two series, the Braves will run away with it because it seems do or die for those two teams right now.
The Braves have impressed, pretty much everyone in baseball.
Yeah, I don't think anybody expected them to play with the Phillies and dominate the Phillies like they have.
There are a couple of current runaway divisions in baseball. I'll talk about that after you got a point for us, Grady. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to shout out a name. I'm not exactly sure what his first name is, but he pitched last night, pitched to shutout ninth. Walker, our reliever.
Jeremy Walker.
Jeremy. If he can continue to play well, I don't see a necessary need for a necessary need. That's redundant. A need for us to move for a reliever. And to add to the point that John was making, I don't see the Phillies winning the division unless there is some kind of divine intervention. But the Nationals, I feel like if they stay as hot as they are and we cool off like we did versus the Royals, it could be in question.
Right. But the Braves are starting to heat up, and I mean the Nats have Scherzer and Strasburg. The offense is I mean, there's just nothing special there. I could definitely see them getting a wild card spot. But
and I think
right now they're in the second wild card spot by half a game.
Yeah, I think they have a good defense as well, fielding wise.
As far as divisions are concerned, the only folks that are running away would be you could say the Braves with the East. Dodgers obviously are drilling everybody in the West. They're up by 15 plus games.
Yeah.
Yankees should win the East, no problem. Houston should win the West, no problem, even though Oakland is hanging around.
Mm-hmm.
But the NL Central, the AL Central, and both wildcard races, a lot of eyes on there because, a lot of teams are on the bubble. A lot of teams can make a run. Who are some teams that you guys would like to see make a run at the playoff late that are kind of, barely in contention?
Definitely the Rays. I feel like the Rays, if Blake Snell can actually start pitching well.
The Rays are very underrated.
If he can learn how to pitch a baseball again and Jose Alvarado learn how to save games again, I think that they are definitely going to make the playoffs. But those are the two biggest questions.
Currently half a game spot out of the AL wildcard race. They could definitely do it. And I think they're an underrated team. Who else is underrated? Minnesota. In the AL Central, even though they don't have it wrapped up. The Indians are still close, but the Twins have a killer offense.
For as good as they've been, people do not talk about them enough, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
As far as a potential wild card team, I'm not sure exactly where they are in the standings right now, but a team that would probably be in a lot better shape if it wasn't for the Rays, and that's the Pirates. I know they played pretty well against the Braves. They have an impressive offense, kind of lacking on pitching, though.
The Pirates are out of contention.
Well, you know what? I said it.
I'm with you though. They've been playing better recently, but no, they are last in the NL Central. But the NL Central has some teams that could definitely make runs. The Cardinals are leading the Central, who nobody seems to know. The Cubs are a game back. The Brewers are also in a couple of games back, and a half a game out of the wild card spot. So it's possible that you see 3 NL Central teams in the playoffs on the NL side. What do y'all think about
just
the
not
Brewers?
the Pirates?
Not the Pirates. I just feel like the Brewers could really. Everybody expects them to be doing a whole lot better than they are.
Yeah.
Nobody expected the Cardinals to steal a playoff spot, much less win the Central. And the Cubs are just kind of hanging around.
They were the favorite for the Central, right? The Brewers.
Yes,
coming
they were.
into the season. That's what I thought. And yeah, you just hear nothing about the Cardinals and the Cubs, like you said. So I don't get that.
Yeah, it should be interesting as we get closer to August and September. I think that the wild card spot, most of the divisions will kind of get wrapped up, but the wild card races are really going to heat up in September.
Quickly on Twins, I feel like they're one of those really good regular season teams, but who is their ace is the question mark. Like, who do they go to on the pitching staff? And the same question with the Braves in that respect, but I feel like they're a very good regular season team.
The Braves, you could throw out Soroka, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Odorizzi for the Twins has been very good.
I guess that would be the ace.
But
Odorizzi.
do you trust Odorizzi? He's had a great year this year, but if you look at his past stats, he's been above average, but nothing special, a 3-4 starter.
Yeah, that's fair enough, and that's why some Braves fans want the Braves to go get a great starter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've already pretty much tarnished my reputation.
No, Braves, go ahead.
But assuming you leave it in, which I'm sure you will, and that's fine. But no. A wild card team that I would like to see is the Oakland A's. I feel like they have a really solid team.
I can definitely see Oakland making a run. They're underrated too.
And I feel like they don't get much respect.
If Matt Chapman can actually start hitting some fastballs instead of getting pitched sliders
he looks
and
like
sinkers.
It looks like his dad's throwing to him right now.
But that's what happens when
Chapman,
you're that powerful. You're not going to get a fastball in the
Matt Chapman, very underrated. They are half a game out of the wild card spot.
Unless you're Acuna. And he just gets tried all the time, and they pay the price.
I guess.
Very true. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Southeastern Sports Podcast. Really enjoyed it. Don't forget that you need to go and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at SE Sports Podcast for the latest update. We're going to try to come out weekly. Any last thoughts, you guys?
Go watch the NASCAR races next weekend.
Absolutely. The Tricky Triangle at Pocono on NBCSN. It will be a great race on Sunday.
Also, to bookend it, 28 days away from college football, baby.
Get excited, everybody.
Like the movie?
Just like it.
Second time does one.
Also,
have a good afternoon, everybody.
This has been the Southeastern Sports Podcast with John Abrams, Riley Hubbard, and Braison Pierce. Be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. For more coverage of Southeastern sports, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at SE Sports Podcast.